What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens episode review. Today, guys, we're going to be going over episode 32 of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens anime. Now, before we do begin, I do want to apologize for not doing a summary preview analysis on Friday when the episode came out. A lot of stuff has happened this week that I really cannot. I had to catch up on a lot of work because 2 weeks ago, I was actually in quarantine for the entire week. I was exposed to coronavirus. Luckily, I had no symptoms whatsoever, so I was able to escape pretty well. I didn't have any symptoms of it, so luckily I escaped. I got a test and I was negative, so I was really good. And I had to then catch up on work afterwards because I still got to get a job done. So it made editing videos really hard. Luckily, I had videos recorded, but I didn't end up recording episode 32's summary preview analysis video during that whole time of when I was doing like the massive recording. So I just never had the time to do it. And also, I think it's also kind of a blessing at the same time because episode 33 summary when it came out, and it did contain spoilers to this episode, so I was kind of worried about that. So I just decided, you know what, not do it this time because of that and the fact that it was work related. Even though this was a big episode coming out, it was a risk to take, so I do apologize if you guys normally like the summary preview analysis that I do. I think this is the second one that I've missed. The only other one I've missed is the episode 15 one, which was for other reasons similar to this one as well, except the whole like virus thing. So yeah, I'm back into doing the actual sevens content. We're actually going to be discussing 32 on this one, so you'll kind of hear my thoughts from the preview analysis video that I would have discussed during that video in this review. So I hope you guys enjoy, and without further ado, let's get started. So what were my thoughts on this episode? I thought this was a great episode. I really did enjoy this episode. I will say though that later on, I will have some complaints a little bit forward ahead, but I will explain when we get to those parts. And it has to retain the duel between Yuga and Asana, but again, I will get to that in a second. But we start off this episode from where we left off in episode 31, where the building gets basically demolished. It gets a big old hole in it, and we see all these kids from the Goa 6 Excavation Club. They're all coming in. We see Asana rolling in, as obviously she was the one in charge. We see Galliant walk in, and we do see Chevalier for the first time as well. I think this is the first time he's actually appeared in the show so far, not including the flashback that we got in the last episode. He was actually in this episode. He actually gets to speak for the first time. We actually do learn the rescissions as well, and then we also learn about Asana as well during this, and they kind of go into a bit of an interaction with each other, and she kind of explains how rush dueling is basically forbidden in the Goa 6 Elementary, and basically they're going to take these kids into their kind of sort of custody. And we also get it, and it's kind of funny during that whole. Well, actually, you know what? Before I actually get into it, because I want to try to follow normally episode wise, before I get any further, let me talk about something in regards to the opening. Thank you, Bridge, for finally changing your visuals. If you noticed in the opening, there was a major change in this opening, and it had to do with the Roa scene. When we had in the old version, we had the scene of Roa had his eyes closed, he opened his eyes, and then we see his Royal Demon's Heavy Metal comes on the field before we get the whole scene with Goha, Corbin, Mr. Goha. But in this version of it, we see Yuga. And then the screen goes up and we see Asana, Neil, Yuga, and Otis all in that one shot. And I am so glad that they finally changed it. It took a while to get this out, might I say. And I'm finally glad that they finally did it. Do I think they should have done it earlier? Absolutely. I feel like at the least they shouldn't have done this in episode 28. And maybe it's just because I'm a little bit greedy when it comes to this kind of stuff, because when episode 27 came out, we already knew that Asana was going to be in this arc, so we should already be seeing visuals for her. Even in the Neil arc, we should have seen Neil in the opening, and they never done it. And maybe that's just because in other animes, I've just been experienced and used to that. A very good example, and actually this is a pretty recent example, has to do with Black Clover, an anime that I watch on my own time. Recently they had their opening 13, and they basically just showed all of the villains for this season 4, which Black Clover is in their season 4 at this point, and they showed all of the main villains that are going to be in this arc. So I'm kind of already used to seeing main antagonists in openings, and even Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, like Vrain's opening 2, like before we even like saw Bowman, we knew that Bowman was going to be in this arc because they did announce it, but he was already in the opening. Like, they were changing the opening visuals to show these main antagonists in the show from the very beginning. So it did take them a little while to do it. I'm still glad that they actually did it, but they shouldn't have done this way sooner. They should have done it at episode 27. I feel like would have been the preferred one, but if they did it at episode 28, I think that makes sense as well, because that's when we actually see Asana, even though we technically see her in episode 26. We don't actually fully see her until episode 28, where she actually interacts with Yuga. So I feel like that would have been a fair spot, but I wish they did it a little bit sooner. But I am glad that they finally changed it. It was about time that they actually changed the visuals, because all they were changing was the monsters, which, don't get me wrong, at least they do, but the monsters are not that important. Sure, they're cool to see on the screen, but you should be more focused on your characters and not the monsters. Just saying. But wanted to kind of get that little thing over with, but we kind of have some very interesting things with Asana. We kind of learn about her whole personality and all that stuff. We even learn a backstory, which we'll get into in a little bit. But we see that she has this weird thing when it comes to drones, as she doesn't like any modified drones, basically. When Kaizo tries to talk to her, she doesn't like him because it's a modified Goha drone. And when Sebastian says, like, he is just like, this is normally how he's supposed to be, she says she doesn't like a drone that basically talks like a human. She likes just the plain old ones where you hear the engine running and basically just like a normal machine, which, to be fair, it's cool. I mean, that's an interesting personality she has. I feel like it's a little bit weird. I feel like, to some degree, it is as weird as Django's like card obsession. I think that one is a little bit more weird than Asana's, personally, but I don't know, I still think it's pretty weird. But she ends up gathering all of the Goha 6 elementary students. They end up leaving the scene. Yuga ends up actually chasing after her and demands a rush duel, because if you remember back in episode 28, they were supposed to duel. Yuga did challenge her in episode 28, but that was not the case because she had some stuff that was going on, so they had to postpone the duel for another time. And apparently the rule is that they cannot deny a duel. And she accepts the duel. And Yuga decides to add a condition to this, as if Yuga won this duel, or wins this duel, I should say, he will... Or, what I should say was that the Goha 6 elementary kids should be free to rush duel whenever they want. Because obviously that's Yuga's goal. He wants people to rush duel. He wants people to enjoy rush dueling and rush duel as much as they want to. And she obliges to this, but she adds her own condition, which she actually doesn't state until the very end of the duel. So, I mean, kind of a bold move on her, but he still accepts it anyway, and we go into the duel. So this is where we kind of get into this. So, well, how about I just talk about the full duel, and then when we get to the fourth turn of the duel, then I can really start talking about it, like when we get close to the end of the duel. So, we started this duel. It's a 4-turn duel. We have Yuga gone first. Nothing really too special. He gets out 3 monsters out into the field. Not really impressive. No ace monsters that or that any of us really recognizes. I believe he has, like, I would say, like, I know he triple summons twice. He summons Windcaster Tornado, or Torna, I think is how the name was, Tornado. And there was another monster. It was the monster that Roman summoned. I can't remember that one's name, but I know he triple summons those ones, and then there was one other monster on the field I couldn't remember. So, his first turn, not really too much in his first turn, but Asana goes on her first turn, and she basically goes all out from the start. She is actually activate a field spell during this entire duel, which helps up boost up her worm monsters, which, yes, this is the deck that she plays. It's a worm type deck. As states from Rook, when she summons her ace monster, they kind of, or I think it was Roman that makes a comment, it's like, oh, it's dragon monsters just like Rook. But Rook makes this thing, it's like, no, that's worm type monsters. They're different from dragon type monsters, which I always think it's weird that worm monsters sometimes look like dragon monsters. I never understood why they did that. I guess the way I think it's because of the mythology that they do with some of the worm monsters. They end up looking like dragons, but I've always been so confused, especially when it comes to one trap that I actually own. Oasis of Dragon Souls is a trap card in the real life card game where it helps bring back worm type monsters, but if you read the thing, it says Dragon Souls, so you think it has something in regards to dragons, but that's not ends up being the case. But I don't know, it's still pretty cool. It's the first worm deck that we've actually seen in 7 so far, so I think it's pretty cool. I mean, we've seen insects now, spellcasters, warriors, dragons, machines. I believe we did see Cyburst, so it's cool. And Fiend as well. The Gagato's deck is Fiend type monster. So we get into Asana's turn. Like I said, like I mentioned, she activates this field spell. She gets a couple of monsters down the field. She gets her ace monster, Build Dragon, the Mythic Sword Dragon. Looks pretty cool. I think it's a very interesting design. It reminds me of one of Rook's dragons. I think it's Bunker Strike, I think is the one I'm thinking about. The yellow dragon. It kind of looks like that to a degree, but it kind of has a pink aura, which that's also due to the field spells effect, which helps to gain attack points. She goes on a full assault on Yuga, destroys his entire field, and is able to deal 1,600 points of damage in total to Yuga before she ends up ending her turn, which I should mention something else as well. Throughout this entire duel, there was only one spell and trap card played this entire duel, and it was just one spell card, and it was the field spell. That was the only spell or trap card that they played during this entire duel. No traps were played. We did see Asana have one spell card in her hand, but she doesn't end up using it. So, yeah, it was just more of monsters attacking during this duel, which is fine. I don't really mind it, but, you know, I wish there was a little bit more variety of it, but I understand what they were trying to go for. But we go into Yuga's turn. He is able to get out 2 monsters onto the field again. He goes into another tribute summon, and he gets out Brave of Twilight Light Across. Remember, this is not the same one that he's been summoning. The last one he's been summoning was Brave of Dawn Light Across, even though there really isn't a difference. I just think the color scheme is different, and really the effects are the same. They are able to summon monsters out into the field. He uses Brave of Twilight's effect to get out Seven's Road Witch, which is able to get out Seven's Road Magician, which he didn't actually have his summoning chant for Seven's Road Magician, which is pretty interesting. I mean, it makes sense because I think they were trying to shorten the time of the episode by doing that, so it makes sense in the long run, but I think that was just a pretty interesting thing to note. But you see that Yuga has a pretty strong field. He has a pretty strong board. He's able to have Seven's Road Witch gain 400 attack points because she used her effect to summon Seven Road Magician. Then he uses Seven Road Magician's effect, is able to gain attack points equal to all of the attributes. We already know this effect. There was 5 in the graveyard, so he's able to gain 1,500 attack points. Goes in for the attack, and is able to wipe out her field as well. I think he got her down to 1,500 life points or something like that. So he was able to do a pretty good amount of damage. So we go into her turn now, and we actually do get to see her hand during this whole thing. And that is where just like the whole shock factor comes into this, as Asana had maximum cards. She has maximum cards. Are you kidding me? What? Well, actually, before we even get into that whole conversation, after Yuga's turn, you know, you're celebrating, and you even see it during this duel, which is another thing that I didn't really like, was that she was kind of already, like, enjoying rush duels, and I kind of really don't like that, because I feel like it's going to get to a thing where I feel like every main antagonist is just going to end up loving rush duels after it, and don't get me wrong, it's not a bad thing, it's just I feel like I just want something different. I want someone that wants to still resent rush duels for an antagonist. At least one of these antagonists, even after dueling with Rush Duels, maybe still doesn't like it, but will be willing to accept it. I think that would be really cool, but that was not Asana in that case, which it's completely fine. But hopefully, when we get into one of these main antagonists later on, maybe someone that will still resent Rush Duels even after he loses to Yuga. But we do get a little cool backstory on her during this episode. It was a scene with her and her grandfather, out of all people. They were actually riding R6, which is the thing that she always rides on, and they kind of have a little bit of a interesting conversation during this entire duel. They mentioned this new, like, there was a type of dueling that used to exist but apparently had disappeared because Asana wanted to see this new type of dueling, but obviously that wasn't the case because you couldn't really, it basically didn't exist anymore. So we got that really cool backstory on it and kind of learning about her, which I really did like. Though I feel like I would have preferred something more than this. I don't think that they shouldn't have showed it, but I think they could have shown this a little bit later because this has to come in regards to the maximum summoning. And maybe this is just me personally, but I have an issue with her using maximum cards. It's not that I don't want her to use maximum cards, it just didn't make any sense. Why does she have maximum cards? Because right now, and even they state this, that maximum cards should not exist right now. The only people that had maximum cards was Neil and Yuga, and we know how they obtained it. Neil was the one who created Rush Duels, might I, or Maximum Summon, might I add, so obviously he's going to have it, and we saw Yuga literally sacrifice his friends' accounts just to get maximum cards to be able to take out Neil. And funny enough, and I'm going to say this for the entire duel, this felt too similar to the Yuga and Neil duel. And maybe it's just because of the Maximum Summon kind of putting the nail in the coffin for that, but the duel even just kind of felt that way. The only difference that I saw was just the extra turn. Which, even that, Yuga didn't really have that much of an impressive field, might I add. And to be fair, Neil didn't really have as much either. I think his monster was only like 1,000 attack points, so it didn't really have that much of a stats when Yuga went into a second turn, but I just felt like the duel felt similar, and even like some of the reactions that we were seeing after she maximum summons felt very similar to the Neil duel. So basically this duel just felt a little bit too resemblant to the Neil duel, and I wish she was a little bit further away, and I kind of wish they explained how the heck she had maximum summon. She had maximum Mars, I shouldn't say maximum summon, because you take the time to explain these two characters having it, but you don't have the next main antagonist that's using maximum cards, the only one that has it and can use that at this point, because remember, Neil cannot duel right now. He has 6 penalties in his duel disc, so his count has been terminized. He can't duel anymore, and Yuga gave his friends counts back, so he doesn't have rush duel cards, which is another similar thing, is that the main antagonist obliterates the protagonist with maximum cards, and he has no counter to this because of the fact that he doesn't even have his own maximum cards in it, which I feel like I already know what's going to happen in the next duel. It's going to be a maximum versus maximum, which I'm fine with. I want to see more maximum monsters, but I want you to at least explain why characters have them, especially since you're putting in the time and effort to do it. Now, I will say though, I will take all of this back if they do explain it in a further episode. Maybe they were just saving it, but I feel like you should explain it now, because why the heck does she have the maximum cards when it didn't even make any sense, because she resents rush duels, might I add. So why would she be using rush or use maximum summon, which is exclusive to rush duels? So she's using the full capacity of rush duels, the type of dueling that they're against. I just feel like the whole continuity of it just doesn't make sense. And maybe I'm a little bit too harsh on it, but I just feel like it just didn't make sense whatsoever for her to have it. But overall, I still think it was a cool scene, don't get me wrong, in the moment, but in the whole grand scheme of things, they better explain why the heck she had maximum cards. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more on the easy side of this. I shouldn't have gone on that much of a rant, but I kind of did want to mention that. But I still love the episode, don't get me wrong. It's just, it was a minor gripe. Even though it might sound like a big gripe, it is a minor thing, because I still think the scene was cool. She obliterates Yuga, which he already had 1,700 attack points, which I should say this too. I feel bad for Seven's Road Magician. He has had to face two maximum monsters. In fact, he had to face the same one twice. He had to face YGG Drago twice, and he got obliterated both times. So you gotta feel bad for this monster because now he's taken the brutal assault of two maximum monsters, one being twice and the other one being for one time. So he's gotten destroyed by maximum monster 3 times. You gotta feel bad for this card. I just gotta say that much. But Yuga ends up losing the duel at that point, and then this is where the stipulation comes in. As now Asana, and doesn't even mention this to them because they're in complete shock after this, they are now forced to transfer the Goha 6 Elementary, which is insane that they actually decided that. And I wish they did this a little bit. I'm not as mad from the complaint that I have with the Asana scene, but we do see Rons and Rinazuki, they kind of run up to Gakuto, they're like, hey, what are you doing here? I thought you were on a trip. And they said, like, no, they got us too. We were forced to transfer as well. And that's really as much as we get from that scene, so this should make it to a point where Gakuto needs to get furious. I kind of wish they did show his, like, he kind of, like, I was kind of hoping that he would just start yelling at them. It's like, hey, why is Rons and Rinosuke with you guys? What did you guys end up doing? And I hoped Galleon just made a smarky remark, and I just wanted to see the anger on Gakuto's face, because I feel like the more angrier the character gets, like your main character, like kind of try and defend his friends, the more excited I get towards this duel. And even though they didn't see it, we still have, whenever this duel, which I very hope so it comes soon, maybe it is in the next episode, and I'm going to mention, I have still not read episode 33 yet, so maybe it is in the next episode. Don't spoil it, please. Please don't spoil it. If it is in episode 33, let me figure that out for myself. But hopefully, that duel has to be happening very soon. It is either in this next episode or this episode before. So I'm very excited to see that interaction. But the last thing I gotta talk about was the last shot, which I feel like was the best part of this episode. We go back to the scene with Mimi and Mr. Goha. If you remember back in episode 28, Mr. Goha collapsed on the floor. And in fact, we saw his mask fall off, and we see Mimi scream, and that was it. And that caused a lot of questions on what in the world just happened. And we get to that scene finally, and she realized that the president was on the floor, and she was surprised by this because I'm pretty sure that no one has seen Goa's real face, which we don't even see it. We just see this like old guy on the floor, so basically confirming that all my theories were incorrect, which I'm completely fine with. I knew that they weren't going to be true at all, but you know, it's kind of funny to look at it in the end. It was just some basic dude, which to be fair, the other members of Goha, or up top of Hexagon, were nobodies, the other 5 except for Mimi, so it's pretty interesting. But we see then the head just flies up into the air and starts talking to Mimi. And then the most craziest thing that they could have possibly done in this episode just to make this phenomenal, Mimi becomes the president of Goha Corp. I am dead serious about this. The drone starts talking to her and says, like, with you wearing my mask, you can become the president of this corporation. And she accepts it because we've learned before that she's been trying to grow the corporate ladder. We've got this mentioned in, I think, a couple of episodes, actually. I think the main one was episode 20, where she was, like, talking about, like, she was trying to support her son and try to climb the corporate ladder so that she can be able to support her child. And obviously she takes this opportunity and becomes the president. Was not expecting that at all, and I'm absolutely glad that they went with this. I'm so happy. My jaw was on the floor when I saw this because I was so shocked at what in the world just happened. I literally watched that scene like 4 times in a row. I'm like dead serious about this because I was just so shocked about this. It was awesome. And now it's kind of funny because now she kind of has to laugh because not people are used to hearing Goha actually speak, because the drone does speak, but normally they hear the ah ha ha ha. And you can even tell this because when he actually spoke to Neil in episode 27, I believe it was, they were all shocked that they heard him speak. So it's rare for them to hear it. So I'm assuming that everyone in the corporation just hears him laugh. So now she has to do this whole laughing thing as well, as she ends up talking to one of the staff members, and they kind of mention that Yuga and Co. have transferred the Goha 6 Elementary, and this shocker And that basically is it for the episode. They just told that to Mimi, and now I don't know what Mimi is going to really do in regards to this. Who knows? Early prediction, she might make the maximum cards for Yuga. Now, that might be a bold statement, but all Yuga needs to create his maximum monsters is 3 plain cards. And that was how he was able to do it with the ID cards, because they looked similar to it. So maybe Mimi is able to grant him some cards that he can use. I have no idea what it's going to be, but I can maybe see that happening without having to risk their friend's account. So we'll just have to wait and see. We don't know the importance of it, but we'll just have to wait and see in the next episode or whatever episodes to come. But we just have to wait and see. And might I add, before I actually end off this review, girls have been getting like the power during this arc. I think like 4 girls have gotten their spotlight. You have, well, no, I think more than that. You have Roman, Tsuchiko, Ron's, Rook's sister even, Asana, and Mimi. So 6 girl characters have been pretty prominent in this arc. So for all you girl Yu-Gi-Oh fans out there, you're getting some goddamn love in this series for girl duelists. They are really getting some love in this series. Not something you normally see in a Yu-Gi-Oh series, which they've never been good at writing it, and Bridge has done pretty well, I think, for writing the girl characters, even though there's some things I don't like the whole berserk mode with quotation marks with Roman, but other than that, I feel like they've done them pretty well, to be honest, and hopefully they keep on growing, or at least some of the characters. I don't think we'll ever see a Rook's sister again, to be honest. It would be cool, but I don't think we will see her again. So we'll just have to wait and see. I might be wrong about that, but yeah, that's going to be it for this review, guys. A little bit on the lengthier side of videos, but hey, there was a lot of stuff to cover in this episode, so yeah, that's gonna be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your guys' thoughts on this episode was. Did you like it? Were you in the middle of it, or did you just not really like it? What were your thoughts on the duel? What were your guys' thoughts on the whole Mimi scene? To me, that was my favorite part of this entire episode, and I did enjoy the duel, even though I had that complaint with the maximum cards. I feel like it was still a pretty good duel, and I probably should mention, if you guys have normally been paying attention to the channel for a while, you probably know that I do a segment every 10 episodes where I go over the last 10 episodes and rank them. So even though I was upset with that, depending on if we get a backstory on how she got these maximum cards, can depend on its spot. It can be from a mid on this, like maybe number 5 or something like that, to potentially number 2 or number 1, depending on where it is from the future episodes. So I still enjoyed it. I just feel like we need a little bit backstory on it, which I feel like we will get, so I'm not really worried about its position. So you might be getting an early preview of where this might be on this list. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, guys, take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.